Okay, so on to the penalties in relation to the tenant fee ban. Now, this is what is concerning. It is £5,000 per offence, okay? So for you, Mr. Landlord sat there, that means if you took £100, what's that for? If you just broke that down for me, what am I giving you £100 for? Okay, so two things, referencing and drawing up the contract. £10,000 fine, because it's two things that you're charging me for. And the same with letting agents, which is why I asked. We charge a fee that's broken down into three areas: a contract fee, a referencing fee, and an inventory fee. If we as an agent take a prohibited payment and we continue to charge it, every time we do that, £5,000 fine per part of that fee. So actually £15,000 per administration fee that we call it at the moment. That is what we will be levied. It then goes up to £30,000 per offence for repeat offenders. So those agents that are doing it and keep ignoring it and keep going and keep going and keep going, that fee that charge that was 15 grand is now 90 grand. Okay, you see what I'm saying? They are trying to bankrupt the agents that are not going to listen. I'm all for that. Please bankrupt them, because they've got to listen. We've got to be on the same page. These two are other things to consider. The tenant fee ban is a criminal offence, and it is also an offence under the banning orders that we're going to talk about very briefly later on today. A landlord can be banned and an agent can be banned if you continue to take tenant fees and you're prosecuted for doing so. If as a landlord you are banned and you are a self-managing landlord, that means you have to give your property to an agent to look after for you until you're no longer on the banned register. Section 21, how hard is it now to serve a Section 21? Before, you just used to have to serve the Section 21. In fact, you'd give them a tenancy agreement, and on the other hand, you'd give them a Section 21. It was really, really easy. Now, you've got to jump through some hoops, walk over a few coals, then climb a mountain, just to see, have I done everything that I need to do to get to serve this notice? If you've took a prohibited payment, until that payment is returned to that tenant, you cannot use Section 21. If you've served Section 21 and you sat there waiting for it to expire and work, you will be unsuccessful in the courts. If the tenant turns up and says, they took a payment off me, Mr. Landlord, Mr. Judge, and they can evidence it, that notice is going to be kicked out and you're going to have to start again. Now, yes, sir?
I'm going to ask this one because I'll forget what it is.
Go on then.
So you say penalties, and penalties look scary, but they're only scary if they enforce. Enforce them and who's them?
Trading Standards and the council, and I actually think, and I really do believe this one will be enforced, because we've already got tenants that we're calling now saying, oh, can you pay your renewal fee? They're like, tenant fees are banned, you know, you can't charge me nothing. Tenants are going to scream about this if agents are taking payments unlawfully, because it is an outright ban. So they are going to openly tell the council that this is happening. And I do think it is going to be enforced. I personally am not taking this risk. £5,000 fine, ban, restriction on Section 21, no. Now, there will be accidents, and I have to say, you've got to bear in mind that this is a huge change. One of the things I said was, some tenants are so brilliant that every year they renew. So in July, let's use July as an example, in July, we send to them the tenancy renewal, they fill it in, they sign it, they send it back, they pay their rent via standing order, but in July they always add the renewal fee onto that rent for us because they know it's due and we don't have to chase it. We've got to make sure that we are clocking every payment that comes into our bank account. And for you guys, it might not be as difficult because I don't suspect you will have as many tenant payments coming into your bank as we do. But for us, we're talking 1,600 properties. Therefore, we've probably got 3,200 tenants. If they just slip a quick 50 quid into our bank account, I've got to be on that ball, and you've got a set period of time that you can give it back, okay? I believe, but please don't quote me and wait for the final guidance because I'm confused whether it's 7 days or 28 days. I believe it to be 28 days. You've got to return the prohibited payment, but it might be 7. Don't quote me on that one. But there will be accidents, and what they're looking for here is ignorant landlords and ignorant letting agents that are just outright ignoring it, okay? So for you as landlords, the main concern is those that charge fees to tenants, please do not do that no more, because the penalties are applicable to you as well. So for 100 quid, I don't quite think a £5 fine's worth it. And your deposits, you need to consider and look and audit your deposits. Any of you that have contracts with a higher deposit over 5 weeks, look at when the renewal's due, decide whether you're going to give some of that money back to the tenant, put it at the 5-week amount and renew a contract into fixed term, or whether you're just going to leave them rolling until that tenant leaves. Because you've got to now weigh up your options as to what's better and beneficial to you. Yes, sir.
Is there any problem with tenants paying 6 months rent in advance?
No. 6 months rent in advance, that's a really good question. That's absolutely fine, but it needs to be documented as 6 months rent in advance. There has always been concerns about 6 months rent in advance if it's not documented properly. So for example, if a tenant pays 6 months rent in advance and your tenancy agreement states that the rent is due monthly, effectively you're holding 5 months as a deposit because it's not legally due yet, and therefore that money should have been registered as a deposit. You're looking very frightened here. Well, as this kind gentleman said here, enforcement is very lax, and that unfortunately is probably one of the things they're not really going to look at. They're looking for bigger, you know, more rogue landlord problems. The thing is, I agree with the sentiment of the government and all of this legislation is to make the private rented sector, firstly, a level playing field. Secondly, of a better standard. Some of the properties I have been into, I cannot even explain to you that the landlord feels that that property could be rented to a human. In fact, it couldn't be rented to an animal. So it's to improve the standards. But somewhere, amidst all of this confusion, I think it must be Brexit, it sent them mad, they've just lost the plot. They sincerely have lost the plot. And I empathise with every single one of you in this room that are landlords, because it is so hard.